All right, everyone. It's 10:02. We want to make sure we let Dr. Dilworth use as much of the time as possible. We are so grateful to have him here speaking with us. We are in for an incredible treat. I'm just going to talk up front here for a few minutes, and then I'm going to just stop talking, and we'll turn the time over to Rollo. A few housekeeping items. The way we want this sort of to run is Rollo has prepared a few segments that will last around an hour apiece for the next few hours. He's going to present for around 40 minutes or so, and then we want to reserve a few minutes at the end of each segment for some question and answer. That will be related to what he's discussing. Now, on your Zoom page here, on the bottom panel, you should see a few different icons. We're going to ask you to direct all of your questions to the Q&A button. I think it's on the bottom right of the screen. And if you just click on that, a little window pops out. And please feel free to be writing down some questions you might have for Rollo at the end of each of these segments. I will be moderating those and sort of compiling a list, and then we'll ask pertinent questions at the end of each segment. We will take a few breaks throughout the course of this webinar. Like I said, we'll do a few hour-long segments, and we'll leave breaks in between each of those segments as the webinar goes on. One other final thing, we will be sending at the end of the webinar a survey link. Now, those of you who are Utah educators, Leslie Timmons, who's our ORF specialist with Cass Children's Choir, has set up relicensure points for this via Midas. There's a wonderful opportunity to get a few points. So in the link, there'll be a few questions. It's a survey that asks how you feel like this went, some feedback for us. And then the only thing I think we will need is for you to fill out that survey, and you might need to go dig and find your Midas number, because we will need that if you want the relicensure points. So just sort of keep that in mind as we go throughout this. Without further ado, I think that's it. If you have any other questions at any point, please feel free to send a Q&A, and myself and Jan Jenkins, who is the administrative director for Cass Children's Choir, can help field some of those questions. I'd like to read just really quickly a little bit of a bio for Dr. Dilworth, and then we will turn the time over to him. We're so grateful to have him here. Here, this is pulled from his webpage on Temple University. More than 150 of Dilworth's choral compositions and arrangements have been published, many of which are a part of the Henry Leck Creating Artistry choral series with the Hal Leonard Corporation. Additional publications can be found via Santa Barbara Music, Cola Voce, and Dr. Dilworth is also a contributing author for the Essential Elements for Choir and the Experiencing Choral Music textbook series. He is a frequent presenter at local, state, regional, and national conferences. Dilworth has conducted 43 all-state choirs at various levels, elementary, middle school, high school, and has conducted 6 regional honor choirs and 4 national honor choirs for ACDA, OAKE, and NAFME. He has most recently appeared as a guest conductor for international choral festivals and masterclasses in Australia, Canada, Taiwan, Ireland, and China, as well as all-state choirs in North Carolina, Oklahoma, Ohio, Arizona, and Massachusetts. He's also led honor choirs for the Central and Southwest regions of the American Choral Directors Association, international festival and clinic invitations, including Canada, Singapore, Austria, and France. In addition to that, he's got a few choral books that he's published that we've actually purchased for our staff recently that are just incredible. And we are in for a real treat today to hear from Rollo Dilworth. Everyone, please give your best Zoom welcome, even though we can't see you, for Dr. Dilworth. We'll turn the time over to you, Dr. Dilworth.
Thank you, Jaron. It's really an honor to have this opportunity. We're going to have you fill out just a quick survey that I think has now appeared on your screen, just to give me a better sense of the group that we have today. And you can, I assume, click all that apply. Much of our emphasis today will be toward the elementary and perhaps middle grades, but there are a number of things that we'll be covering today, including some of our vocal techniques and warm-ups that will certainly be applicable to all age groups. So if you can go ahead and fill that out, that would be absolutely awesome. Also, Jaron, I hope you're still listening, because I've tried to put our handout in the chat, and for some reason I am unable to paste something into the chat. I can type words into the chat, but I can't paste the PDF into the chat. So I don't know if there's some particular function that can be handled on the host's end that will enable me to do that. That would be awesome.
Jan, if you're there, if you have any thoughts on that, we'll look into that.
Okay.
Rob, I'll get back to you.
Sounds good. So, okay. So meanwhile, what I'd like to do is to forge ahead, and I'll go ahead and share my screen with you, which is exactly the same as the handout that I will share with you at some point today. So it looks like we've got preschool, elementary school, middle school, some high school, young adult, and adults. Okay, great. So I will definitely aim much of my work today in the elementary middle, but there'll be something for preschool and high school as well as young adult. So thank you so much for your quick responses to that survey. So let's go ahead and just begin to talk about vocal technique and what I consider to be an important sequence for getting the body ready, getting the breath ready, and getting the voice ready. And I truly believe that it is in that order that we as vocal technicians, as choral directors, as general music teachers, need to be thinking about this process of preparation as we get those voices ready to sing. So the first thing, of course, is preparing the body. And when we prepare the body, there are very specific objectives that we should have in mind. One should be making sure that the posture is correct, making sure that there is body alignment, whether it is from a standing position or a seated position, or maybe some other kinds of positions, depending upon what type of music you teach. Sometimes we have other positions, maybe in general music. And relaxation, making sure that the body is as relaxed as possible. So when it comes to relaxation, I think that I tend to like to get the shoulders rolling. So let's go ahead and roll those shoulders back for just a bit. And then let's roll those shoulders forward. And with younger kids, I really like to make this a rhythmic type of activity. And you can do this with older kids as well. So you can actually have them roll their shoulders with a particular tempo in mind, and even with a particular count in mind. So let's do that. Let's do 4 forward and 4 back. Here we go. 1, 2, roll them forward. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Roll back. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's shift our shoulders to the left. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So even something as simple as relaxing the body and releasing the tension in the shoulders and the neck, you can make that a musical activity with your singers. If you drop the head and roll it around, you can give them maybe 10 seconds to do it, and then maybe have them do it again and give them 15 or 20 seconds to do it, or counts to do it. Or they could even do it as you have some music being played in the background. But making this a musical experience will be something that will, again, reinforce their musicianship, but also help them to sort of figure out, okay, if I have 10 counts to roll my head around, at what pace can I do that and successfully get all the way around by the time the teacher has, counted to 10 or counted to 15 or to 20 or whatever the number happens to be. So that's something that's very important. In terms of alignment, well, let's do a few more things with relaxation. We can do things like shake our hands out, right? And we can shake those out in rhythm as well. We could do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or sometimes you hear people count 1, 2, T4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's much easier to say T than 3, right? So you could do a 1, 2, T4, 1, 2, T4. The legs, 1, 2, T4, 1, 2, T4. There are some teachers who do 8 and then do 4 and then do 2 and then do 1. So that is, again, a very rhythmic activity that allows the singers to engage various parts of the body with the goal of relaxation in mind. Now, in terms of alignment, if you are seated, I often encourage my singers to pretend they are standing up from the waist up. And that will often allow them to have their shoulders back and their rib cage up. You can certainly verbalize those things as well: shoulders back, rib cage up. If they are standing, oftentimes I will have my singers go into a ragdoll position and then come back up and have those shoulders rolled back. Sometimes, if I want to have them really straighten out their posture, I will have them put an imaginary puppet string on their head, and that really sort of lengthens the spine a bit and gets your singers to make sure that that alignment is nice and in order. So we've got to make sure that first and foremost that relaxation and alignment are where they need to be. If these two things do not happen, everything else that goes forward in your general music class, in your choir class, is probably going to be less than effective and efficient for your singers. Here is a chant that I love to use where I say to the singers, lean forward, relax, roll shoulders back. And I literally have them lean forward into a semi ragdoll position and then drop, let their their arms dangle where they relax. And then they come up slowly, slowly, and they stand tall and they roll those shoulders back. If you have students who may have physical disabilities, obviously have them adjust to what works for them, particularly if they are in a seated position. If you have students who are in a wheelchair, for example, if they are able to lean forward and while in the wheelchair and then come back and then roll their shoulders. So this position, this kind of posture technique works well both in a standing position and in a seated position. Other activities, of course, can be, arm stretches, facial massages where their hands are here and you're rubbing the face and relaxing those facial muscles. And then I've mentioned before this idea of a rag doll. So these are some wonderful basic techniques that will enable your singers to achieve the most relaxed position possible, the most amount of relaxation, and then alignment, posture alignment. Now, here's some other activities that I encourage. One, if you're in a standing position, I call it the bass player's breath. If you are in a seated position, perhaps this exercise can be called the cello player's breath. But what it does is if you're seated, students are sitting, on the edge of their seat or a little bit more forward, like a cello player would. If you're standing nice and tall, and you are pretending that you are holding a bass, a string bass. Of course, you're holding it by the neck and one hand is up and the other hand is holding the bow down below your waist, just below your waist. And what you do is as you move the bow forward in order to sort of an up bow, that is the inhalation. And then moving the bow in the downward position or back towards you is the exhalation. So you could literally do this. Inhale. And I often have my singers pretend that they are sipping through a straw in order to get that, for that inhalation. And what that does is it actually focuses the inhalation so that they're really engaging the diaphragm, much more so than if I have them do this. Because that is often going to elicit more of a high chest and kind of a clavicular level breathing, a clavicle up by the clavicle bone. So you don't want to do that. So to keep that breath nice and deep, you could have them do the inhalation like 4 counts in and then 4 counts out, 5 counts in, 5 counts out. So you can regulate that breathing over a certain number of counts. You could also have them inhale for maybe 2 beats and exhale for 10 beats like this. With a lot of of focus on breath management and economizing the breath. Now, as soon as you have them inhale, it's good to have them go right to the exhalation. You don't want them to hold that breath too long because it will build up a little bit of tension here, maybe a lot of bit of tension. So if you had to do a 2 and 10, and it's hard for me to, obviously I can't count and breathe at the same time, but I would have them do 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's how I would do it. If you want them to stand again, you would have them pretend they're playing a bass, and that will actually align their posture pretty well. And if you have them seated, have them pretend that they're playing a cello, and that should align their posture pretty well. So that's what I mean by the bass player's breath. And you see here that on the handout, I've tried to explain what the procedure is. Let's go to the next activity here, which is what I call breathing with the basketball. And again, you can do this with students standing up, or you can even do this with students in a seated position, and particularly if you have any students who have physical challenges who may need to remain seated, or if you have older adults, for example, who may need to remain seated, they can simply bounce that basketball to the side of them rather than sort of directly in front of them. So what do I have the students do here, the singers do, is I have them bounce and pretend they're bouncing a basketball at waist level, and they are doing these sort of breath calisthenics like this. And oftentimes, to make it more fun, I will have them do a swish maybe every few counts or so. So I may have them do 4 bounces and a swish, and then 5 bounces and a swish, 6 bounces and a swish, 7 bounces and a swish. So I'll just pretend I'm doing a little of this. I'll go swish, 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 et cetera. So what that does is it really, again, gets the breath connection going. It also keeps the singers very musical, and it also keeps them very relaxed throughout this particular process. For those of you who work at the elementary and middle school levels, I use that activity all the time, because particularly with middle school students, they are pretty jittery, right? Many of them, and they're always going to be in motion, particularly some of your middle school boys. So this may be a way to get them to engage and be active at the same time, and of course also be musical. So that's what this breath calisthenics activity is all about. It really is about making sure that they keep that breath very connected. And in terms of making those breath calisthenics musical, you could do something with your class like an echo activity. Let's say you know that in the music you're going to be working on for that particular class period or rehearsal, that you know what the rhythm patterns are going to be in that music. You could incorporate that into a breath calisthenic activity where it's call and response. So I can do, and then you do it. You can even do that with consonants, for example. If you know that your singers are going to have to attack certain consonants with clarity, you might want to include that in your breath calisthenics. For example, you echo and echo back, right? Echo back, et cetera, et cetera. So that could be something that you do as well. In terms of other activities, I talked about this idea of sipping through a straw, and you're really trying to make sure that you differentiate between what would be this high chest, sort of shallow breathing versus this lower abdominal, more diaphragmatic breathing. Sometimes I do the soup bowl or the cereal bowl, and I may have to stand a little bit for this. I'm literally holding the bowl at waist height, and I am taking an imaginary spoon with the other hand, and I am inhaling. And as I am inhaling, I am moving that spoon up to my mouth. So I may do this for over 8 counts. And then push that air back out. And maybe I'll do 8 counts in on the inhalation and 8 counts out, or 8 counts up as my soup spoon is moving up to my mouth. And then 8 counts as soon as the soup spoon gets to my mouth, 8 counts of an exhalation. Now, why do I use that particular metaphor or that particular image? I have young students in particular, I want them to think about that bowl of soup, and the soup that they are putting in the spoon and bringing it up to their mouth is still hot. And by the time it gets to their mouth, they feel the heat and realize that the soup is still too hot. So they're going to blow on it in order to cool it off. And that's why the exhalation and the spoon goes back down into the bowl. So that's a little metaphor that may be helpful for your singers. There is also this idea of leaning over, maybe in sort of a kind of a ragdoll position, picking the flower, sniffing the flower, sigh in a head voice. And I have young singers do that in order to move to the next level of our vocal warm-up activity, which is preparing the voice. Okay, so you'll notice here that the next thing that you want to do once you have prepared the body in terms of relaxation and alignment, and you have now prepared the breath in that you have engaged it at a low, connected, diaphragmatic, engaged level, then you begin to want to activate that head voice, right? And you can do that by sniffing the flower and saying, right after you smell the fragrant flower, if that is a metaphor that you'd like to use. But also, here are some other ideas for activating head voice. One I created this one a number of years ago, called Raise the Roof. And it literally has the students do this. So I can say, raise the roof to the left, raise the roof to the right, raise the roof in the middle, raise the roof all night. And they do that one more time. So that's a very rhythmic and engaging kind of activity to get your singers, no matter what their voice range happens to be, to begin to activate that head voice. So again, it's raise the roof to the left, two, raise the roof to the right, raise the roof in the middle, hands up, and raise the roof all night, up. So that's one of the things I love to do with young voices. Roller coaster, you can have the students pretend that their hand is a roller coaster, and they can do sirens, or they can even do lip trills where they're doing the woo, or the lip trills, etc., etc., etc. You can have them do a choo-choo train, in which they are doing a combination of both breath calisthenics and activation of the head voice. And you can get any student to lead this, but I would suggest first you as the teacher leading this, and I'll show you how it's done. I'm going to kind of stand up a little bit here, but my hands are high right now. They wouldn't be this high. My hands would be at waist level. And I don't know if I can stand and get going here, but my hands are literally at waist level where I'm going. My students are following my tempo, and they're doing these breath calisthenics on the syllable ch. And so they're going ch, 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 very much like a choo-choo train, right? So they're just ch, 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 ch. And anytime during that activity, I can move one hand up and kind of throw it out like this. And that's the siren or the whistle of the train. So the students are watching, ch, 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 woo, ch, 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 woo, et cetera, et cetera. So every time they see my hand sort of throw out there in their direction, I am essentially sort of signaling that that's the train whistle, and that they can do this kind of woo in order to further activate the head voice. And you can let that go on for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, even a minute. And you can change the tempo, alternate the tempo. Sometimes let it go fast, sometimes let it go slow. This will enable your students to keep an eye on your gesture, and they have to keep the breath calisthenics going in the same tempo that you happen to be moving in, right? So there are a number of musicianship skills that you're reinforcing through that two train exercise. Lip trills I just talked about, but I have some very specific ways in which you can let those lip trills go forward. Uh, there's an exercise invented by Patrick Freer down at Georgia State called Scribble, where you literally scribble any kind of random loop and up and down pattern on your whiteboard or your chalkboard or your smartboard. And what you end up doing is using your finger to follow that scribble pattern. And as your finger is following that scribble pattern, once you've drawn it on your board, the students have to lip trill and adjust their pitch according to the highs and the lows and such that you have scribbled out on the board. Again, you can have a student come up and scribble the pattern. Sometimes it's fun to have the students pretend to write their name in the air, and that can be their scribble pattern, or you can have a student come up to the board and write their name, and that can be the scribble pattern. Lip trills. I love lip trills on text messaging, and I don't know if I invented this, but I remember using this, just creating this off the top of my head one day, where I have my fingers down, hands down at waist level, because that's where I want my students to connect the breath, not high up in the chest. And so I will do echo patterns that are text messages where I'm just going, and then I put my hand out and they echo those patterns back. Those patterns could be in 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, and again, those patterns could be the same rhythmic patterns that you have in the repertoire that the students are singing. And so in that way, you're reinforcing. Why do I call it text message? Because most every kid has a smartphone now. And I figure if I can be expressive while I'm text messaging, they have to text message back to me with the same kind of vocal and facial and physical expression. Elevator buttons is an exercise that can be done with lip trills, in which you pretend you push the elevator button at the top of the elevator panel, and your finger slides all the way down the panel and lights up all the other floors, right? Right? And so it's almost like kind of a U shape. And again, that's a sort of a visual image that helps the students sort of imagine the direction of the vocal slides, the lip trills that they are engaging in. In terms of onsets and attacks and articulations, I tend to use paintbrush and tiny hammer. So a number of my colleagues around the country use that idea. The paintbrush being the smooth onset. It's one way to sort of imagine that kind of smooth attack with a paintbrush going across a wall, or the tiny hammer. So you really have sort of a balanced onset with the paintbrush versus more of a glottal attack with the tiny hammer. Why a tiny hammer? Because if you use a big hammer, then those glottal attacks are going to probably be a little bit too forceful on the larynx, particularly for younger voices. So just use a tiny hammer. That will keep keeping the image of a tiny hammer will, I think, help students to make those glottal attacks with a little bit more of a gentle approach. And then pet the animal. When I taught choral methods full time or worked with younger people full time, it wasn't uncommon for me to have a little tiny um, stuffed animal like a little dog or a little cat. And as you sort of put your hand across the fur of the cat or the dog, you can, of course, equate that with your vocal onset, like E, E. And again, it helps singers to sort of have that outward image in order to make some connection with what's supposed to be going on internally with the larynx. Okay. So let's do a little bit more singing. I know you're out there watching, and I hope that I haven't put you to sleep too much. But what I want to do is this exercise, which is in one of my choir builders books, but this is a newer version of May We Follow You. This is a very easy exercise because it's just sol to do. I tend to start in D major if I'm teaching middle school. Sometimes I'll start as high as F major, where C is on top when I'm working with younger singers. But with middle school, high school singers, I tend to start in the key of D major. So let's just for now do it in the key of D major. And what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a rehearsal with the vowel sounds that we're going to be using. The reason I wrote this exercise is because May We Follow You follows the 5 basic vowels that we use in singing all the time. Those vowels are A, E, A, O, and U. I will often accompany this exercise with hand gestures. So just as we have hand gestures in the Kodai system for syllables, I have hand gestures for vowel sounds. And so for my A, it looks like this. The hand is cupped, but sort of relaxed. And then the E, we just take that same hand and we turn it upside down and we put it right underneath our chin. That's the E sound for me. And then the ah sound, we flip that hand over again, but this time we use the other hand to sort of simulate holding a beach ball, ah, and then we turn that beach ball into a softball right in front of our eyes for the O. And then for the oo, we drop one hand and then we use our index finger to circle our lips and reinforce the oo sound. So I'm going to go through those slowly one more time. So this is the A. You can do this with me. This is A. So you can see how each one of those hand gestures sort of morphs into the next very smoothly. So you got this, the A, the E, the Ah, the O, and the Oo. And you can use those hand gestures to reinforce May we follow you. I'll sing and do it with you. 1, 2, ready, go. May we follow you. How about if you try some of those on your own? And you'll notice here with the vocal exercise, I not only have it, I have it written in 4 parts. And the reason I have it written in 4 parts is because at some point, depending upon the maturity level and the development level of your singers, you're going to want to move into 2-part singing, 3-part singing, and 4-part singing. So if you just sing what is designated as the soprano line, you are going to just sing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? If you have singers that are able to sing a second line and you want to develop some part independence, have them sing what's designated as the alto line. Okay, or if that low A is too low, have them go to the tonic, so they could sing "May we follow you," right? That would work. And then if you have young baritones, baritenors, or sometimes we say barely tenors, uh, or barely tones. Sometimes we tease our changing voices that way. We can have them sing "May we follow you." That's about the range of your new budding baritone. They're probably going to be able to sing probably as low as an F below middle C, and maybe able to sing as high as an F above middle C. So that's pretty comfortable for them. The bass line starts on a low D, goes up to a G, goes up to an A, and then a G, which matches the tenor part. We know from research that most budding tenors and budding basses will probably share the range of a minor third, and that shared range is between G below middle C and B flat below middle C. So why not have them share the A and the G for the purposes of showing how common they can be in their ranges, and also it provides a little bit more stability because there'll be safety in more numbers on those A's and those G's that they share. So now I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask you to sing May We Follow You. You can reinforce with your hand gestures if you choose to do so or not. And I think I'll play this once or so, or twice maybe. I'll modulate up to E flat so you can see how this just sort of continues to move forward, okay? So soprano, alto, tenor, bass, or soprano, or bass, tenor, alto, soprano, however you like to do your parts. 1, 2, breathe, and one more, and okay. Great, great, great. A variation on that, my voice just sort of cracked for a moment there. A variation on that would be one in minor mode, play the alto blues. And so same vowel sounds, A, E, A, O, U. But now we're singing minor, right? And why do the altos have the blues? It's because they often suffer from not getting the melody, right? The sopranos often get the melody. So that's why the altos have the blues, I suppose. So let's just sing that once through. Here are your parts: tenor, bass, tenor, alto, soprano. 1, 2, ready, go. So those are the alto blues as we know them. How do you work with young people to think about to think about tone, color, and vocal register? Well, one of the things I like to do is to think of feathers, sugar, and boulders. And the reason I do that is because I try to train the larynx, no matter how old or how young, to think about what vocal register to use based upon what word I am giving them. So if it's feather, I have the hand floating here, and they think head voice. And not only do I reinforce that notion by saying the word feather, but I'm using my hand to kind of gesture as a reminder as well. So if I'm working on a piece of music with my singers and I need to kind of remind them to maintain that head voice, I can show them this gesture in real time while they are singing. So that's a really great reminder and conducting gesture that you don't really learn in conducting classes, right? But that will help you to remind your students to keep that note floating in the head voice. And I reinforce that by saying the word feather, right? And I'm going to stand a little bit here. Sugar is sort of like holding that beach ball again, but I'm holding it right sort of dead in the center of my body. And I will say the word sugar, sugar, much more sort of a mixture of head voice and chest voice. And then I'll use my hands out like this and have them much lower to sort of gesture this boulder. And I'll say boulder, boulder, and much more in my chest voice. And obviously, if you have younger kids, that's probably not as easy to do. But if you have middle school and high school students and adults, they'll be able to do that. So I have this feather, sugar, bolder kind of effect. And I'll reinforce that from time to time, again, to remind them in terms of what sort of register I want them to be engaging, and also as a way of physically giving them gestures that I can use in my conducting, in my rehearsal, to kind of remind them, okay, this is the register we're going to engage for this particular passage or for this particular part of the song. The same idea can be communicated with this latte, latte, holding like you're holding a little teacup or a little coffee cup, a little demi-tasse uh, with your latte. Or with your water, you can pretend you're holding a bottle of water, again, at sort of chest level. And then you can pretend you're holding a mug of root beer and hold that way down low. So you've got this latte, water, root beer. So it's the same kind of idea as feather, sugar, and boulders. And what I really love about latte, water, and root beer is that there's some kids in your classroom who will reinforce their learning really well through storytelling. And there are many cultures and communities around our nation and around our world that do a lot of engagement within their culture using storytelling. So you could actually make up a story if you want it. And I do it all the time. I'll say, one day I went to Starbucks and I went in and I asked for and I hold up my gesture for latte, and the students respond, latte. And then I thought, okay, but I'm probably too young, or I don't think I want to drink any latte. Instead, I think I better ask for a bottle of, and I hold my hand up like the bottle of water, and the students say water. And so there are ways in which you can kind of induce your students to, or prompt them to say one of these three words based on the story that you're telling and which gestures you happen to be showing them at the same time. So I really like that idea. Let's look at the growing phrase. This is a vocal warm-up exercise. Well, actually, I'm going to skip the growing phrase. That's not written here. That's in my choir builders book. In the interest of time, let's go to soap opera. The reason I call this soap opera is because I want my students to be very dramatic. Now, we're getting to a point where kids won't know what a soap opera is anymore because they are no longer on television. But so I'll have to think of something more dramatic to call this when I get it published. But the idea is to get your singers to oscillate between do, re, and do to ti. So you can have them, you can use solfege, you can reinforce it, of course, using your kodai hand signs if you choose to do that, and have them sing all in one breath if possible, this do, re, do, ti, do, re, do, ti, do, re, do, ti, do. All in one breath if possible. And you'll also notice that the singers can sort of put a little bit of emphasis with the tenuto markings on the downbeat of each of the measure if you choose to add that. You can also have your singers pretend they're playing a violin while they're doing this, maybe 2 notes to every bow stroke. Take a breath, inhalation on the up bow. Do, re, do, ti, do, re, do, ti, do, re, do, ti, do. Have singers do that a lot. They can do it in a standing position while at their seats, or you can even have them walk the quarter note pulse while they play and sing at the same time. So you can do a little bit of Dalcroze eurythmics if that's a part of the kind of work that you do. Or, I mean, you don't have to call it Dalcroze eurythmics. You can just have them walk to the macro beat while they play their imaginary violins. Now, if you have 2 parts, or you want to create 2-part independence, you can either have, if you've got tenors and basses, of course, you can have them sing it down this octave. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, sol, do. You can have them pretend they're playing a cello or a bass pizzicato. And if you have elementary or unchanged voices, have them do it up the octave. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, so, do. That's okay too. And of course, they would be playing pizzicato, whatever instrument you would like for them to play, while the other voice part would play the violin, of course, right? So let's just do a few modulations of this to give you an idea, and you can pick whichever part you want to sing, whether you want to sing the do, re, do, ti, or the do, ti, la. Okay, you can decide. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Here we go again. And one more time. And so you see how that works. And so if you only want to do unison lines, that's okay. But if you've got some part independence things that you're working on, whether it's with your elementary choir or your middle school choir, your high school choir, this could be something that you do. Now, an advanced form of this would be to play this exercise or to go through this exercise, have one group sing the upper line, have one group sing the lower line, and maybe have another group improvise on the syllable ah. Just improvise and create and make up their own melody or their own ideas, pretty much based on what they're hearing that's implied by the chord changes. So that's one way to get your singers to begin improvising. And of course, you can rotate within your classroom so that each group has an opportunity to do the top part, the bottom part, and the improvised part. Okay. Let's just look at a few other activities. Here is one that I really love: the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue, because this works on diction, but it also works on singing a descending major scale. And the way that I normally start this is I will teach it just by using a rote approach, where I will have my singers tap to the macro beat. They'll tap to the dotted quarter pulse, and they'll just listen, and I will chant the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. I may just have them do that in an echo fashion. The other thing I love to do is to teach this using solfege first, where I will have them keep the macro beat and they will repeat after me, and I'll go so do do ti ti la 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 so, then so bum bum bim bum bum bum, so fa fa mi re re do, so fa fa mi re re do. And then I will sequence. In my sequence I will put both of those patterns together, where I will go from a short 2-bar pattern to a 4-bar pattern. And again, we're tapping and keeping the macro beat, and then I'll do the so do do ti ti la 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 so, so fa fa mi re re do. Then they repeat. Then I'll go the lips. Sorry, I'll go the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. They respond bum bing bum 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 bum. Articulate the words to be sung. Articulate the words. Then we'll do it together. We'll do that whole thing together. And while they are audiating, singing in their head the top part, I will then have them watch me, and I will actually, using hand signs only, I will hand sign the bottom part. And then I will have them hand sign it with me, while again keeping that macro beat, but not singing out loud. They have to audiate in their head the new pattern that I am hand signing with them. And then maybe after 2 or 3 times of doing that, I will say, if you can sing The solfege now sing it out loud, and they automatically will sing the second part, right? Most of them, because they've been audiating it in their head. And now suddenly I have two-part harmony. I can get one group to sing the top line, I can get another group to sing the bottom line. So that's how, in terms of my teaching sequence, I would make that happen. We're running a little bit short on time for this segment, so I'm just going to show you a few more of these. We'll make this handout available to you. Hopefully we'll be able to throw it into the chat, and you'll be able to take these and download these. If you choose to use any of these, please do not share them with people who are not registered for this activity. And the only reason I say that is because I think that, I just want to be fair to the people who did attend this activity and receive this. So I hope that you'll be able to understand why I asked you to do that. Now, if there are people who meant to come but couldn't for emergency purposes, yeah, you can pass it on to them. But please don't just hand it out to everybody in your school district, whether they decided to come to this or not. So that's a baseball fanfare that you can do, again, in any key. And then if you have two parts, whether it's upper or lower, you can do that one. The next one, I want to blend in harmony. Just depends on how many voice parts you have in your ensemble. Okay, this is for a 4-part treble. And let me just do a few more of these. Here's a part independent exercise using solfege melodies. And here is a round, which I really like. It's kind of Mixolydian because it has a lowered 7. So you could sing a do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, la, do, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. You can reinforce that with Kodai hand signs if you choose to do so. And once I teach it that way, I have everybody sing the "We are climbing up the mountain, over the ridge and down to the shore." That's the 2 bars, right? Up and down. And then we can then turn it into a round at beat 3. And if you've got some singers whose voices are starting to shift into that baritone world, some point during the round, have them come in on "Walking along the shore, walking along the shore." Limited range, right? It's only a range of a third. And we know again from research that that is about where most of your tenor and bass voices are going to be able to land. Or they can do the whole thing an octave lower. If you've got voices who have fully changed, whatever octave they want to sing in, this is a great round that I created a few years back. And one more exercise before we go. There's a vocal jazz one down here as well that I'll just kind of talk you through that we won't do. But this one we're going to do. This is an exercise I created a few years back, again, to work on diction. But at the same time, you'll notice that the top line is a descending so to do, but with varying rhythms now. We have ba 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 ba. So those are our rhythms, right? And we can do that to the alphabet. It goes like this: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. I'll let you try it, okay? See what you can do with it. And again, the goal here is to have really, really crisp, clean diction. So if you want to reinforce that, going back to something I mentioned earlier in this segment, you can use the tiny little hammer as an outward gesture to reinforce that. I often have young singers do that so that they can really articulate and tap. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, etc., etc. Here we go. Try it for me. Everyone sing the top line in whatever octave you like. 1 and 2 and 3. Here we go. So that's our sort of tiny hammer articulation, somewhat separated, semi-staccato vocal line to help us reinforce our diction. Now, the bottom line is an alternate line that you can sing, and instead of singing it short and staccato with the tiny hammer, you would sing this line very smooth and legato and perhaps with the reinforcement of the paintbrush. Now I know my ABCs. Tell me what you think of me. Or next time, won't you sing with me? You sometimes hear people sing that. And so you'll notice here that this melody outlines the arpeggios, right? Here's the one chord, here's the four chord, here's the one chord again in descending order, and then here's a little bit of five. You have the re, ti, do, right? So there's something very basic about what's going on there in terms of music theory and building musicianship. Okay, so let's try that. Now I know my 1 and 2 and ready and sing. Now I know my ABCs and tell me what you think of me. So you can do this over and over again, modulating up a half step each time, asking your singers to either pick the line they want to sing or divide your choir up into two, or general music class up into two groups and have them alternate or have them stay on the same line, doesn't matter. Or you could just have them pick whichever one they want and keep modulating. So there are many ways that you can keep variety going as you modulate through this. So let's do this a couple of times and you can pick whichever line you want to sing. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3. Here we go. And go on. Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. So you see how that continues to move forward. This last exercise is one that is more of a vocal jazz style. I think it's important that our singers learn how to sing in all different styles. And the second line here, the lean forward, relax, roll shoulders back, is the melody line. So it's just a repeated riff here. And you can start with that. And then you simply, on each repeat, just add more lines in whatever octave works well. If you've got singers who are, particularly at the middle school level, who are limited in their range, have them jump in on the lean forward and just relax. On the repeat, they sing roll shoulders, just roll them back. You've got the lean and just relax. Your cambiato voices, boys' voices who have not quite settled into tenor or baritone, they're going to be able to wail that, no problem. Your basses, posture, posture, or up the octave, posture, posture. So there are lots of opportunities for different voice ranges to engage in this activity because we want to be as inclusive as possible, right? We want to make sure that there is something that our singers can be successful doing, particularly as their voices are growing and developing. So I'm going to do a stop share for a moment and ask Jaron if he'll pop back on and see if there is if there's some questions and maybe even an answer to my question about the chat feature.
Yes, so we've had a few questions submitted, just a few. If anyone else would like to send in a quick question, we can take maybe just a few minutes before our break. Rollo, you might even be able to see them if you go to the Q&A.
Okay. Oh, yes, I see 3 questions here. Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay. All right. Oh, Cindy Giebler. Wonderful. Okay, so Joseph Allred says, how long would you spend on relaxation and alignment? In some classes I see for 1.5 hours, some for 50 minutes, some for 25, depending on the age. That's a good question. I think only a few minutes is what I would do, depending upon age appropriateness. I tend to kind of I think of my warm-ups as kind of time period, my overall warm-up time period as being somewhat equal to the age of the kids. So if you've got 9-year-olds in front of you, if you've got 7-year-olds in front of you, the entire warm-up period from start to finish may only be about 7 minutes or 8 minutes or 9 minutes or so. The other thing that you can do, Joseph, is um, oftentimes we sort of, relegate these activities to the beginning of the class rehearsal or the class period. There's no harm in sort of in putting these relaxation exercises, dispersing them throughout the entire rehearsal period. So if you have a 25-minute period, maybe do 1 minute of something quick to relax the body, but maybe 15 minutes into that rehearsal, students are starting to slump again or forget about what they're supposed to be doing in terms of posture. And you have to remind them and do something again for 60 seconds. So it really will depend on your age group, but also I would encourage all teachers to think about putting warm-ups and relaxation exercises throughout the rehearsal. Cindy's question is, here in the upper Midwest, we have a regional dialect that really compresses the medial A. Yes, instead of flag, my students say flag. Yes, flag. Yes, when prompted, they will overcorrect to flog. Is there some sort of hand gesture that will help them? That is a very good question. That vowel sound, Cindy, is really, really difficult. But what I tend to do, let's see, I'm going to sort of move the Q&A out of the way, is I will modify my A vowel. If I'm doing, if I want more of an sound, I'll do almost like a smile. I'll do this kind of gesture. That may help. So from an to an usually helps when I'm that's the little gesture I kind of just created out of thin air from time to time when I've had to do that. I totally get what you're saying, Cindy. I'm from the more southern Midwest of St. Louis, Missouri, and we put R's where they don't belong, like the word wash. There's no R in wash, but we put one there anyway, right? Instead of a knife and a fork, we eat with a knife and a fork, right? So I get it, and it's so good to hear from you, Cindy. Nita has a question. Do you have a PowerPoint with your presentation that will be available? That's a good question. I'm going to make this handout available to all of you as soon as I can figure out how to get it into the chat. I've tried to copy and paste the PDF and it won't seem to go. I don't have a PowerPoint of me physically like doing all these things like a video. I do have some videos online. If you go to halleonard.com, I don't know where they are, but I did a workshop for them, a virtual workshop for them last summer, in which I actually do illustrate the A, E, I, O, U and do some of these vocal warm-ups. If I can find where that is online, if it's still online, it would be Hal Leonard Joy of Singing 2020. And I think it's actually out on YouTube now. You'll see my goofy face doing all sorts of things. So thank you, Nita, for that. And we'll definitely get this handout to you, even if we have to collect everybody's email addresses. But for some reason, the chat is stubborn, or there's some locked feature where I can't physically copy the PDF and put it in the chat for you like I normally do in Zoom. So it may be some sort of webinar feature that locks us out from doing that.
Now, Rollo, can I speak to that really fast? So sorry.
Yes, sure.
So that is the issue. I don't think we have it set up with this particular version of Zoom that we have. So if it's all right with you, we do have everyone's email addresses collected who registered for this webinar.
Okay. Yep.
And if it's okay with you, what we can do is you can send us whatever you feel willing to share.
I promise I'll send it. Yep.
And then we will make sure to send it out to everyone who's registered here. Now, the other thing I will also bring up, Rollo, if this is still okay, we had discussed having this video available for a short time on our website. If that's still okay with you.
Okay, yes, absolutely.
We are recording this webinar, And so even if you forgot one element of it, you could go back to that video and watch it. And I think we agreed on around a month. We'll keep it up for just 30 days or so. And
Okay.
we will have that, everyone, on our Cash Children's Choir website, which I'll make sure to put a URL in the chat
Okay.
as we're wrapping up. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, sure, no problem. Thanks for that information. So we have an anonymous attendee who asks the question, is there a way to tell the difference between a voice cracking due to lack of warm-up and one due to maturation? Is there anything that can be done to help a singer with his or her changing voice during maturation? Yeah, so let me take each of those questions separately, anonymous attendee. And so there is a way to tell if it's a lack of warm up and maturation if you know that person's voice well enough. I encourage every teacher to check the student's voice, particularly if they are in middle school or toward voice change. Check that voice every other week or even once a week, or have them check it and send you a quick voice memo or recording or something. And the reason I say this is because if the voice is just cracking because of lack of warm up, you would have to know two things for sure. One, you'd have to know whether the singer is at the top or the bottom of their regular or normal singing range. Number one. And number two, you would have to know that student's voice well enough to know if they are in a passaggio, in a bridge point where the voice shifts from one register to the next, to know whether or not it is just the voice cracking or a lack of warm-up. Now, as the voice gets more mature, typical cracking is going to happen in those spots. With young voices, young male voices that are changing, it is likely that as you move toward E, F, G above middle C, that voice is going to be cracking like crazy. Also, that's one passaggio. Another passaggio is as you approach middle C from the bottom. There's another passaggio there. So that's going to give you a pretty good idea as to what's going on with the voice as far as the cracking is concerned. Now, in terms of helping singers with their changing voice, there are a number of things I recommend. Number one, for goodness sakes, don't let them stop singing. One of the mistakes that sometimes we make with young maturing voices is we just tell them, oh, well, don't sing in choir this year and come back when your voice has, fully changed or fully dropped or whatever. Don't do that. Encourage them to keep singing. And what you want to do is to create an atmosphere and a culture within your class in which all of your students understand that this is a normal part of life, so that there's not this snickering and laughing and students being made fun of or feeling like they are less than or feeling embarrassed because of their voice changing. So one of the things that you'll want to do is a lot of vocal slides between registers. Doing all sorts of vocal slides on vowel sounds. And even if you hear those chinks in their voice, like you hear in mine, because I'm an old 50-year-old guy now, if you hear those chinks, that's okay. It's just about keeping those muscles going and keeping that voice going, so that as the new notes come in, the singers are able to adjust their new muscle movements to phonate in ways that's going to accommodate and help them to nail those new pitches that they're singing. So by all means, keep them singing. The other thing that you want to make sure that you do in terms of repertoire is have repertoire designed or modified in such a way that it will accommodate wherever those boys are in their vocal development. Many boys will stop singing not because of the total embarrassment of it, but many of them will stop singing because the repertoire that they're singing does not accommodate where that new voice is developing and going. So even if you're doing SSA repertoire, write a B line, write a bass baritone line for them, or have them sing the alto line down the octave, whatever the case may be. We have to make sure that we have warm-ups and repertoire that's going to accommodate them and meet them where they are. Because if we don't do that, they're going to quickly become discouraged and not want to sing, be as enthusiastic about singing. Okay. Suggestions to get sixth grade boys with changing voices to open up and sing. Yes, um, I would say repertoire, repertoire, repertoire. I don't know, Nita, if you've got your boys all in one class or if they are with the females in the classroom, but find ways to help them to feel special. And there are wonderful, wonderful pieces out there. Like when I used to do voice check with my sixth, seventh, eighth grade boys, I would do this warm up with them. This is one of many warm ups I would do with them. Sorry, wrong key. That's what I would do with them. And so finding literature that's going to engage them will be one way to do it. Another thing is if you have access to some of your seventh and eighth grade boys who were once sixth grade boys, find ways, even if it's during the lunch hour or maybe from time to time, have those seventh and eighth grade boys get out of science class and come and join those sixth grade boys and give them some confidence and to help them to sing. Much of the time, they simply need a role model who's going to guide them and let them know it's going to be okay. And of course, with female voices, it's not easy sometimes to be a role model for those male changing voices, just as males cannot always be the greatest role model or the ideal role model for those female voices. So take advantage of other students in your school or even in the high school. I used to have the high school boys come over sometimes to cheer on my eighth grade boys. Those are the kinds of things that may be helpful. Is there some way of helping students become stronger in their passaggio area? Uh, yes. Uh, and I would say any exercises that allow them to cross the passaggio from the top down. So if they approach the passaggio from above rather than below, it will tire their voices out very easily if all the time we're trying to approach the passaggio from below. So if you're trying to get a seventh grade boy to sing, oh, they're going to keep going, oh, oh, and they're going to keep pushing and straining and stretching to the point that they're going to get tired really quickly. But if you have them start in their head voice and sing, even if they do that, if they do something as drastic and chinky as that, you call it the vocal armor chink in the voice. You can you will have a better chance of developing that passaggio and strengthening it than from below. And I think those are all the questions we had. Okay, great. Well, this seems like a great time, Jaron, to take a break. It is exactly 15 past the hour. I almost said 1:15, but that's not where it is where you are. And so let's take a 10-minute break, come back at 1:25, and I would like to talk about social emotional learning. And that's a buzzword we're hearing a lot in general education, but I think that there are strong implications for that in the choral and general music areas. And I have, yeah, the PowerPoint, I hope you will enjoy. And it has a little video embedded in it that sort of shows you the end result of what can happen when we not just think about the musical aspects of what we're teaching our students, but the social emotional learning implications that go right along with that. So 10 minutes and I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rollo.
Okay, we are at the 10-minute mark, and so I'm just gonna check in with Jaron here to see if he thinks we should be moving ahead here. What do you think? All right.
Yes, sounds
Okay.
like a plan.
All righty. Here we
Thank
go. All right. I will share my screen and we'll look at this PowerPoint together. So this presentation is entitled "Never Give Up: Social Emotional Learning in the Classroom." And the hope here is to really talk about what other um, what other goals and objectives you can employ in your choral classroom beyond building musicianship skills. One of the things I impart to my own students now that I've been teaching future teachers for the last 25 years or so is this notion that yes, we are music teachers. Yes, we are teaching music, but first and foremost, we are teaching people. And we have to always remember that music happens to be the tool that we are using in order to educate and to inspire and to reach our students. But we are teaching people first and foremost. So we're going to look at what is social emotional learning, what are those competencies, what kinds of things are we aiming for when we think about social emotional learning in the choral in general, but also in the choral classroom. What does this have to do with the national music content standards? What are the commonalities between music learning and social emotional learning? And finally, how do you integrate social emotional learning activities and objectives into a music rehearsal? So here we go. So in terms of the social emotional competencies, hold on, let me back up here. There are 5 of them. There is what's known as self-awareness. In other words, where is my place? Self-management, am I in control of myself? Do we really have the ability to manage our emotions, our thoughts, and our behaviors effectively in different situations to achieve goals and aspirations? Just jumping back to self-awareness here, the first one, where is my place? I'll elaborate on that just a little bit. That is the ability to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior across contexts. Moving down to the third one here, social awareness. How well do I get along with others? This involves the abilities to understand the perspectives, and empathize with others, and including those from people from diverse and different backgrounds in cultures and contexts. Responsible decision making is the fourth one. In other words, do I make good choices? This has to do with the ability to make caring and constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions across a diversity of contexts and situations. And then relationship skills, finally. Am I a good friend? These these are the abilities to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships and to effectively navigate settings with diverse individuals and groups. So you can see that these are skills that we want our students to have, of course, if they are to be not just better musicians, but to be better people, better human beings within their classroom environment, and certainly within their larger school and neighborhood communities. So what is social emotional learning? Let's define this. There was an organization that was founded in the mid 1990s, which is the Collaborative for Academic and Social and Emotional Learning, which is what CASEL stands for. You can look them up. CASEL.org, I think, might be their web address. And what they've said here is that social and emotional learning is an integral part of education and human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. So you can see some of the competencies that I just talked about embedded in this definition. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school family community partnerships to establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction, and ongoing evaluation. SEL can help address various forms of inequity and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe, healthy, and just communities. I just want to back up here and sort of reinforce this idea of beyond trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction. I love that that's in the definition or the explanation of SEL, because SEL is not a substitute here. We're not going to look at SEL as a substitute for rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction as it relates to vocal music. So I would never encourage any of you out there to choose a piece of repertoire solely based on its SEL, potential SEL impact. We need to be choosing repertoire and creating activities and developing instruction that first and foremost support musical growth and musicianship skill building, and social emotional learning can work alongside that, or certainly in more of a secondary kind of role. So please understand my own personal philosophy about this, and I think that it's fairly congruent with the intent behind behind SEL and its original definition here. So I just pulled up the New Jersey social and emotional competencies and subcompetencies. Some states have their own, but they are pretty much the same as what Castle has put out, except the bullet points below may be a little slightly different. But the main headings here of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, those are the same in every state and in every community and every district. But some of these bullet points down here may be teased out with a little bit more specificity, or some of these bullet points may have more emphasis or have more meaning. Have more meaning or relevance in one particular district or school setting than in others. So you'll see here that under self-awareness, there are the competencies of recognizing one's feelings and thoughts, recognizing the impact of one's feelings and thoughts on one's own behavior, recognizing one's personal traits, strengths, and limitations, recognize the importance of self-confidence in handling daily tasks and challenges. I won't read all of these to you, but you can see under self-management, understand and practice strategies for managing one's own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Under social awareness, recognize and identify the thoughts, feelings, and perspectives of others. So these are all skill sets that we hope we can draw from the musical activities and experiences that will help our singers to not just be better musicians, but to be better people. Responsible decision making, develop and implement and model effective problem solving and critical thinking skills. So these are things that we already do, I think, in most of our music classrooms, but SEL has given us sort of a way of categorizing and maybe sort of codifying some of these practices and expectations that we have on our students. And then relationship skills, establish and maintain healthy relationships, utilize positive communication and social skills to interact effectively with others, and et cetera, et cetera. So I encourage you, I didn't check before this webinar as to whether the state of Utah has some specific sub-competencies or how much SEL is being practiced or looked at within the state, but or in other states. I realize there are people on this call from other states, but it would be great for you to check with your state Department of Education, or even with your local school district, to find out to what extent SEL is playing a role in curriculum and in instruction. So let's look at the national music content standards. And most of us know about these four artistic processes, right? Creating, performing, responding, and connecting. Recently, I think it was 2014, we saw the shift from those nine standards to something much more sort of broad in category and scope, namely these four that have to do with these very broad behaviors of creating, performing, responding, and connecting. I'm sure that's not new information to any of our listeners out there today, so I'll keep moving. So let's look at common transferable skill sets um, that both are found in both music education and in social emotional learning. You may have seen earlier, I made a reference to a book by Scott Edgar, and I'm trying to actually find it here in my house. I thought I had it right up here on the shelf. It's somewhere around here, but it's a yellow book. I'll go back very briefly here. Here's the book, Music Education and Social Emotional Learning by Scott Edgar. I encourage you highly to get the book. It's a wonderful read, and I think that it will be helpful to you if you are interested in delving a little bit deeper into this kind of work. So here are the common transferable skills: decision making, grit. We use that word a lot here in Philadelphia. That seems to be a big deal. Multiple ways of knowing, creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, emotional awareness, reflective learning, process orientation. So these are the kinds of skill sets that we already employ in music education. None of these skills are musical in and of themselves, right? They're not, decision making has nothing to do exactly with a quarter note versus an eighth note, but how you think about interpreting a piece of music, for example, certainly engages one's decision making skills. Um, sometimes this moves on its own. I'm so sorry. I may be gesturing in a way that's moving this. So multiple ways. Oh, I know. I forgot to take the timer off of these slides. So we'll just have to kind of toggle back and forth. I used to have a timer on them because I also have audio narration that goes on with these. So I bet that that's what's happening. So at any rate, I'll control it here. So multiple ways of knowing, grit, creativity, collaboration. These are all very important skill sets that are part of the social emotional learning continuum. But again, also we find them in music education. Collaboration, we do that all the time, of course. We have students working together to achieve a common goal. We certainly engage them in communication, critical thinking, emotional awareness, reflective learning, and process orientation. So much of what we do, of course, is about the process, and also certainly about the product, the concert or the contest, but also process is part of our orientation. So what additional opportunities do we have for social emotional learning in the music classroom? Music teachers can assist students in setting their own artistic goals. It doesn't matter if you're an elementary, middle school, high school student. Um, Devising solutions for individual or group errors, instead of always giving the answers, try to help students figure out how to develop problem solving skills on their own. Navigating performance anxiety. There are actually ways in which we can do this using social emotional learning competencies and techniques, and understanding the power of music for social change. I got that in just before it changed on its own. The lesson objective. What is a typical music objective? Well, choral students will be able to perform this piece called Never Give Up with correct pitches, rhythmic accuracy, and appropriate dynamics. That's a typical music objective that we might find in just about any of our classrooms, right? Well, what would happen if you enhance that music objective with social emotional learning skills, such as, here's the same objective, but I have now enhanced it to read: choral students will be able to collaborate with one another to interpret and perform Never Give Up with increasing accuracy of pitches, rhythms, and rhythms, and with artistic expression. So what you've noticed here is it's this basically the same objective, but I've now injected some of the language of our social emotional learning chart that I showed you earlier. Remember this chart? Talking about collaboration and emotional awareness and critical thinking and creativity. So I basically just incorporated some of those SEL skills that I know are in common with music learning. So says Scott Edgar in his book. And I've created a much more enhanced objective that gets at not just the musical skills, but the SEL skills as well. So how does this work? What does this look like? Well, here is the music objective again with the SEL skills. I put the music objective at the top. Choral students will be able to, once again, collaborate with one another to interpret and perform, never give up, with increasing accuracy of pitches and rhythms and with artistic expression. And again, where I have the underlying words there, are really sort of a combination of musical and SEL outcomes. So let's take a look here. Let's look on the left side of the screen. Here are the music objectives with the standards in mind. Performing correct pitches and rhythms. That's definitely a part of the objective as written above. And that, of course, equates to the music arts standard of performing. Performing with artistic expression. Again, that is a music standard and it coincides with the broader idea of performing. Oops, sorry. Collaborating with ensemble members and conductor teacher. Well, that is responding. You're responding to the energy and the collective energy in the room amongst your peers, but you're also responding to the gestures of the teacher, right? So that's collaboration. And then interpreting the score and conducting gestures. That's performing, responding, and connecting. And then performing with increasing accuracy. That's this idea of both performing and responding. So those are the music objectives on the left side of the screen. What about the SEL skills? Well, collaboration, we know, is a common skill set between both music and SEL. And in the brackets here, I put relationship skills. And what I mean by that is this is the broad overarching SEL category of relationship skills. So in other words, in the process of collaborating in the music classroom, not only are you building musical skills in terms of collaborating with the ensemble and reading the gestures of the conductor teacher, but you're at the same time building skills that are related to SEL by strengthening your capacity through collaboration to have relationships, to build stronger relationships with your peers, and also hopefully stronger relationships with your teacher conductor. So you see how this works. The same thing is with interpretation. We know that that is a common skill set that happens in both music and in SEL, but perhaps the outcomes are a little bit different. When we're talking about interpreting the score in the musical sense and interpreting the conductor's gestures, we are reinforcing our performing and responding and connecting skills. When we talk about interpreting the score in the SEL sense, we are at the same time enhancing our social awareness and our responsible decision-making skills. So you can see how many of the objectives that we have put before our students in the music classroom automatically correlate and connect with SEL skill sets and competencies. And this slide and these two columns help you to see how both of those work together in tandem, side by side. The same is the case for artistic expression. That connects to emotional awareness and self-awareness and social awareness and self-management. And then increasing accuracy to be able to perform and respond in ways as a musician so that we get better and better and more accurate every time we sing. That relates to the SEL skill set of grit. And that's this idea that you must build in the process of being determined to increase your accuracy as a performer. You are building your skill sets of self-awareness, of self-management, of social awareness, of responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. So actually, you're building all of those social emotional skill sets simultaneously just through this idea of performing with increasing accuracy. So, how do you go about a rehearsal in your classroom that takes into account social emotional learning? And at what phase of the rehearsal process are these SEL skill sets most prominent and most relevant? So let's look at the beginning of the rehearsal. This is where we have our vocal warm-up activity, right? Most of the time. So think of things like breathing and relaxation, which we talked about in the early segment, but even talk about mindfulness and meditation. There are some teachers who are starting to incorporate this into their music classrooms to help the students to become more centered, to help them to become more focused, to help them to settle down, to manage their emotions. So if we in our choral general music rehearsals engage our students in breathing and relaxation and even meditation activities, we can help our students to build their breath technique and their phrasing technique. So we still are connecting with musical outcomes here, performing and connecting. We can also help them to, we can assist them with focus, concentration, and stress. Sorry about that. And this, of course, connects to performing and connecting in the musical sense, but helping them focus with stress and concentration issues also connects to the social emotional learning competencies of self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship skills. Assisting them with managing their emotions. This has to do with self-awareness and self-management. Scales, etudes, and warm-ups that we engage our students in during the rehearsal process. Of course, they help to build technique. And so that's a performing skill set as it relates to music, but it also connects to relationship skills. And so again, you can see how at the beginning of the rehearsal, the activities that you normally engage your student in, the musical activities that you normally engage them in, also have social emotional learning implications. What about the middle portion of the rehearsal? We can provide opportunities for students to engage in both musical and SEL activities and behaviors. For example, students are asked to perform a musical passage while employing a variety of emotions that the teacher lists on the board. Let's say you have the students perform 8 bars from their choral score, and you want them to perform, one of the words you write is determination, or one of the words that you write is sadness, or maybe one of the words you write is spirited. You know, those are very emotional kinds of words. And having the students do that, performing the same 8 measures in those 3 different kind of emotional states, helps them with their performance skills. It helps them with their ability to respond, to connect to the music in varying emotional kinds of levels. But it also at the same time enhances their social emotional skills of social awareness, responsible decision making, and self-management. What about having students taking turns conducting a musical passage and then having the ensemble perform in response to the emotions they believe are being expressed by that student conductor? So that's another way to enhance performance and responding and connecting skills, but also at the same time paying attention to their self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision making, self-management, and relationship skills. What about the conclusion of the rehearsal? What sort of musical skill sets are we trying to reinforce at the end of our rehearsals, as well as what social emotional skill sets may also be possible in terms of the attention that we give to our students? Well, one of the musical, let's say we have a playing or performance exam or test. You know, sometimes we test our students to make sure they can sing or play their parts, right? Well, that's performing and responding, right? Well, a musical and SEL skill set or objective can be reflecting and answering questions, maybe about the music or about the rehearsal itself. That could be a journal or an exit ticket kind of activity. Whoops, sorry. I should have taken the timer off, I forgot. What emotions do you experience while collaborating with your peers and performing the song? That could be a question you ask them to answer out loud, or maybe in a journal or an exit ticket kind of experience, or describe your process for fixing errors and improving your performance. Well, that is a musical question, but it is also a question that connects to social emotional um, issues with regard to managing one's emotions or social awareness or managing one's emotions. Okay. So how do you assess as student social emotional learning? Now, again, I think that this can work alongside musical assessment of musical competencies or as a secondary area, but it should not necessarily be the primary focus of your music classroom, in my opinion. But if you have a lesson objective in which choral students will be able to collaborate with one another and perform the song Never Give Up with increasing accuracy, how can you assess that? Well, Scott Edgar in his book offers several solutions. He talks about how the teacher can observe the student behaviors and maybe assess the student by observing them. I believe in the possibility of students monitoring their own behaviors and self-assessing. So when it comes to collaboration, you can ask the students to rate themselves when they were collaborating with one another or being asked to collaborate with one another in this lesson, in this activity. They can comment on this first category here, which says my interactions with other students were positive, and they can self-assess and encourage them to be honest. None of the time, some of the time, most of the time, all of the time. So you actually have kind of a built-in rubric here. Or maybe you as the teacher can monitor and notice whether the student was some of the time, none of the time, most of the time, all the time positive in their interactions with students. So the teacher can do the assessment, or the student can do a self-assessment. Interpretation. I made efforts to follow the conductor or teacher's directions when performing the song. This is an easy way for the student to monitor his or her own uh, progress. And maybe this week they sort of check off some of the time, and maybe for next week they're going to try to do better and get and score a most of the time. In terms of interpretation, again, I made efforts to use appropriate vocal and facial gestures in my performance. The student can assess that. In terms of grit, I worked to improve my performance over the course of the rehearsal. So you're basically asking the student to assess how much effort and energy they put into trying to get better and better and better and better and better throughout the rehearsal. So this is another category in which students can assess their own social emotional learning progress. And again, I would say this would be secondary to, did I sing the right note? Did I sing the right rhythms? What can I do to improve my diction? What can I do to improve facial expression? Those, of course, are the musical questions. So let's sort of put this into context. I actually engaged in a songwriting project a few years back with a middle school music class, 7th grade music class here in the city of Philadelphia. And I actually created a group songwriting project in which all 70 plus of those students were collaborating with each other, but also collaborating with me to write the lyrics first. And that's what we did. And then we all collaborated together to decide what the tempo and the mood and the style of the piece was going to be. And we came up with a piece that is now published called Never Give Up. And actually in the printed score are the names of all 70 plus of the kids. We just used their first name and their last initial because they're minors, but they collaborated with me on this piece. And I was just so excited to have this opportunity. And I sort of focused their writing process by having them engage in conversations about topics that were important to them, and topics that had to do with not only what they were going through, but how they can perhaps uh, be assisted in whatever stress or challenges they may be going through, either currently or later on in life. So I did focus their writing and asked them to really make sure that the piece that we write becomes kind of a message that can remind all of us of what we can do in times of struggle. And these are the words they came up with. If you have stress and just can't find rest, when life falls apart, give me your heart. In harmony, we can fight anything. So you can see in that music, in the text that they wrote, in the lyrics, that these words, just in the first verse alone, connect with the social emotional learning skill sets. In fact, pretty much all of them. Self-awareness, being aware of one's own emotions, right? That's one of the competencies here. If you have stress and just can't find rest, well, that's exactly what they're talking about, right? When life falls apart, give me your heart. So this is about being able to recognize the emotions in somebody else, this sort of social awareness learning competency. In harmony, we can fight anything. So there's this idea about grit, right? Self-management, being able to manage one's emotions and really problem solve in order to perhaps solve a particular problem or issue. Then the refrain goes on to say, never give up, you must believe, never give up, you can achieve. You can do it if you put your mind to it. Hold on, keep holding on. Lay your worries on me. I know we'll succeed, never give up. So you can see how in the lyrics, there are all these wonderful social emotional learning ideas. And then the second verse, when you're down and peace can't be found, when lost in the night, I'll be your light. Peace in our hands, we will sing and we'll dance. And then it goes to the chorus again, never give up. And then the final sort of special chorus says, never give up, brother, never give up, sister, hold on, never, don't give up, never give up. So in addition to the musical ideas of, obviously things like pitch accuracy and rhythmic accuracy and diction and phrasing and balance and all of those things that we work toward, we also are able to address some social emotional skill sets. So I just completed a project a few months ago, actually a few weeks ago, with the Greenwich, Connecticut Honor Choir. And these are all upper elementary, middle school students. And we created a video and they learned the song Never Give Up over a period of, about 8 weeks or so. And I did some teaching, and then some of their teachers locally did some of their teaching. We had to do all of this virtually, of course. And one of the things that we did with the project, of course, was not just aimed toward mastery of musical skills, which hopefully you will hear in the video, but also what does this piece have to do with your life? And what did you learn from this piece? What lessons did it teach you? And so what you'll see in the video is the students commenting upon what they learned from the piece, that goes beyond the musical aspects, but also the social emotional learning aspects. So this is about a 6-minute video. I get to introduce the video here, and then you'll hear the kids sing the piece. And then at the end of them singing the piece, you'll hear them talk a little bit about what they learned. So I'm going to close out this segment with this video, and then we'll open it up for some question and answer period. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rollo Dilworth. I am a composer, arranger, conductor, and educator. I'm a professor and administrator at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the Greenwich Honor Choir's performance of Never Give Up. I composed the song just a few years ago in partnership with a middle school group of students right here in the city of Philadelphia, where I live and work. Never Give Up is a song that teaches the singer during difficult times. The life lessons of empathy, compassion, collaboration, and unity are central themes in this composition. The lyrics of the song suggest that it is in moments when we lean on each other and work together that we are able to become our best selves as individuals and grow stronger as a community. I sincerely hope you enjoy this performance of Never Give Up.
What Never Give Up means to me is to keep going and persevere no matter what challenges and hard times people might face in their way, especially now.
So the meaning of Never Give Up is someone expressing that they care for someone and that they're there for someone whenever they need it. So, for example, the words, "Lay your worries on me, I know we'll succeed," is telling someone that they care for them and that they're there for them whenever they need it, and that they're not alone during this time of the pandemic or whenever they need help, and that they're loved and supported and have people there ready to show their love and show that their support.
I think the meaning of the song Never Give Up is trying to convey the message that you should never give up and you should keep trying even when you are at your lowest or toughest moments, and that you can get through it, and that if you just put your mind to it, that you will head straight through the problem and you will get it done and fixed, and that you should never give up because you can do it.
The meaning behind never gives up means that you must never give up in what you do, even when things are hard. You must always believe that you will get something right. You will always believe in your friends, family, and that is what I think never give up means.
What the song means to me is that you should never give up and always believe in yourself, and that you always have someone to support you.
The song Never Give Up means to never give up on the people that need help and yourself and everyone in the entire world. You can make the world different by never giving up on yourself or anyone else.
I think the lyrics in Never Give Up are very important because they're trying to tell you to hold on to your dreams forever, because it's important to do that even right now during a pandemic, because when you're thinking about what's happening right now, you might want to give up on everything, but you shouldn't do that. You should hold on to your dreams forever.
Rollo, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Here's the end. Here's the summary. Sorry about that. The music education standards and SEL competencies can work in tandem to support student learning, and I hope that I've been able to demonstrate that in our session here. Music learning and social emotional learning both seek to enhance some of the same transferable skill sets, such as collaboration, critical thinking, emotional awareness, and reflective learning. Music learning objectives often contain implicit SEL competencies. These music objectives can be written to more explicitly reflect these SEL competencies, which we were able to do. There are many opportunities to include musical and SEL activities throughout the instrumental and choral rehearsals. Music learning is social emotional learning. By harnessing the powerful connection between the two, teachers are better positioned to serve students and to advocate for the arts. So that's my last slide there. I will stop, and let's go to any questions you might have. I see one in the Q&A box. Oh, it says, can we access that video on YouTube? The answer is yes, it is a YouTube video, and I don't think it is private. I will look it up to be sure. I have a link. Well, yeah, and I had to put the link into the video, so that was given to me. So it is definitely accessible on YouTube. I'm sure if you just put in Greenwich, GRENWICH Honor Choir, it'll probably pop up. But I'll double check that during our break, and I'll put the link into the chat because I have a link to the actual YouTube link. Any other questions? Okay, well, hearing none, then what I'll do is let's take one more 10-minute break. It is 9 past the hour right now. Let's at 20 past the hour, I will do one more session on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know that was a hot topic as well that Jaren and I talked about via email. So I'll talk a little bit about that and also do a reading session. I have maybe about 8 or 10 pieces that we can sing. You can sing to your screen, and the music will flip, and you'll be able to you'll be able to sing along. So I hope that will be helpful to you as well. And the music in the reading session all sort of pertain to things related to diversity, equity, inclusion. Most are from elementary and middle level students, but I have some high school things in there too. So see you in 10 minutes. It's 10 past the hour now. We'll come back at 20 past the hour. See you in a bit.
Everyone, before you get up out of your chairs, just so you know, Jan and I were discussing, we wanted to share something with you that we've been working on this last year with the Cash Children's Choir. It's a collaboration with the American Festival Chorus and Orchestra, which is a another choir in the area led by Dr. Craig Jessup, who's also our board president for the Cass Children's Choir. He was gracious enough to put together a Veterans Day event and invited the Cass Children's Choir to sing on one of the numbers. And we would love to be able to share that video with you. So as you're stretching, grabbing a drink of water, Jan is going to have that pulled up and we'll share the screen and just share that with you. We hope you enjoy. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Sing, sing a song, sing it loud, sing it strong. Sing of good things, not bad. Sing of happy, not sad. Sing, sing a song.
It is 2:20, and perhaps we should get started again. I'll ask Jaren for the thumbs up if it's all clear. Thinks I should move ahead.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I see a thumb there. So let's move ahead and talk about social justice, diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, and how that plays a role in the work that we're doing with our choirs these days. So I put together this PowerPoint to talk a little bit about that. And what I'd like to do is just very briefly define social justice. There are a lot of expert and scholarly definitions that exist out there. Some of them are really long and elaborate, and some of them are really short. I think that when we're working with our young people, it's best, obviously, to keep things as simple and as straightforward as possible. Perhaps even with our adults, that can make things a lot easier. So social justice means equal rights, opportunity, and fair treatment, and treatment for all. It's the objective of creating a fair and equal society in which each individual matters, their rights are recognized and protected, and decisions are made in ways that are fair and honest. So most young people can understand those kinds of things. So the whole idea of social justice can be elusive to even us adults, but this is a very straightforward way in which I talk to young people about social justice. Dr. Bree Picauer, who is a fantastic scholar in the field of education, has actually developed 6 elements of teaching social justice, and I actually use those when I am teaching social justice in a music education, in a choral music education context. So here are these 6 elements: self-love and knowledge, respect for others, issues of social injustice, social movements and social change, awareness raising, and social action. You can actually follow this, this pattern, this list in order, or you can actually sort of move things around. There is no sort of set recipe for addressing issues of social justice or teaching elements of social justice, but this is a very logical sequence. And I think that it's been very helpful for me in my work. So by addressing these 6 elements of social justice education in the classroom, teachers lead students to value themselves, respect diversity of the world around them, understand how diverse people have been treated differently and often unjustly, recognize that ordinary people have worked to address such injustice, and take action themselves. And so each of these 6 elements, 6 stages, will help to equip students to not only learn about themselves, but about each other, to learn about what constitutes an issue or an act of social injustice, what are the social movements that have been out there in the world, how do we raise our awareness and become more enlightened and attuned to social justice issues, and then finally, how do we take action? What can we do in our own communities, right? So the overarching themes of social justice are really diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some experts also include the word access, diversity, equity, access, and inclusion. There's some experts who sort of access is sort of subsumed by the concept of equity. So we're going to use DEI for our purposes today. And when I have to explain diversity, equity, and inclusion in very plain, straightforward English to a young person, these are the words that I use. When I explain diversity, I simply say everyone is different and we respect those differences. That doesn't mean we agree necessarily with every thing that is different about somebody, particularly if they have a different custom or a different opinion within their culture or within their household, but we respect that. We show respect, knowing that everybody is different and comes from a different background with different values, different ways of doing things, different ways of seeing the world, different ways of speaking, etc. When it comes to equity, it's this idea that everyone should have what they need to not only survive, but to thrive in society. And that's what equity is about. When I explain equity to a little kid, and I contrast that with the word equality, because equality and equity are not the same thing. If there were two kids in front of me and they both needed a new pair of shoes, if I gave each of those kids $100 and said, okay, go buy your new pair of shoes, and they needed maybe a pair of gym shoes for gym class, let's say. Equality says give both of those kids $100. But what if, in fact, one kid wears a size 8 and their gym shoes are going to cost 100, and the other kid wears a size 11 and their gym shoes are going to cost $120? Equality says I give both of those kids $100 and say be on your way. Equity says I give the kid who needs 100 for their shoes and to fit their feet, and I give the kid who needs 120 for their shoes to fit their feet $120. So that's how I explain equity in really easy ways to a young kid. And then this idea of inclusion, where everyone's voice matters. Everyone feels like they need to be heard. Now, we also have to teach kids in the process, when it is appropriate, obviously, to speak and not speak. And that is a part of the social emotional learning continuum, right? Managing one's emotions. My grandmother always told me to think twice and speak once. And while she said, if you have something important to say, wait until it's your turn, and when you say it, make it really count. And so that's why I always think about her when I think about the term inclusion and everyone's voice matters. So when diversity and equity are working in tandem, it's this idea that different people have different needs. When inclusion and equity are working together, they pair up to give us this idea that the quality of life of all citizens matters. And then diversity and inclusion working together is this idea that not only do our differences matter, but in many ways, our differences, what makes us different, makes us a better community. This idea of inclusive excellence, that we are better as a community because we celebrate our differences and we are different, because that enables us the opportunity to learn from each other and learn about each other. If we were all the same and we all thought the same way and we did everything the same way, we wouldn't have as much to learn about each other, right? So diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's think about it in a musical context. Here's a wonderful little African-American spiritual. By the way, African-American spirituals are wonderful gateways of teaching social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. This little spiritual, Hallelujah, Get on Board, I did an arrangement of this a number of years back. I was hoping to have the video score play for you, but wasn't quite able to get that worked out. But you can go to halleonard.com and look up all of these. And so what's cool about this little spiritual, get on board, little children, there's room for many or more. There's this verse that says, the gospel train is coming, I hear it just at hand. I hear the car wheels moving and rumbling through the land. And then the chorus, go get on board. And then look at this second verse. Here is where you really see diversity, equity, inclusion. The fare is cheap and all can go. The rich and poor are there. No second class aboard this train, no difference in the fare. So that's really about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And of course, this piece is an African-American spiritual. So it in itself is a piece that can help you to point your students toward a period of time in our lives in this world when African-Americans were enslaved in this country, and use that as an opportunity to talk about fairness and social justice issues and discrimination issues. And of course, you can explain those ideas in a way that's age appropriate for your students. And let me say this, even if it is a 5 or a 6-year-old, they don't have to be of African descent or African American to know what discrimination is, right? Kids, as soon as they become socialized in the world and start interacting with other people, they either see discrimination take place either by watching the television, something on television, or maybe they even experience it themselves, where they are pushed to the side or made fun of because they're different in some kind of way, or they're treated differently because they're different in some kind of way. Kids as early as 3 and 4 years old recognize discrimination when they see it, right? So there are ways in which you can be very age appropriate when talking to your students about these things. Self-love and knowledge, remember that that's the first element of social justice. And this is when teachers provide students with opportunities to learn who they are and where they come from. So any song that deals with identity or culture in any particular way can definitely be one that helps to reinforce students' knowledge of themselves. A piece like The Dream Keeper, bring me all of your dreams, you dreamers, bring me all of your, sorry, there's a typo, heart melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth away from the too rough fingers of the world. This is a piece I use to help students with self-knowledge and knowledge of others. Who is the dream keeper? Can you be a dream keeper for somebody else? Or who are the dream keepers in your life? So I ask students those types of extra or non-musical questions. Respect for others. Teachers can provide students with opportunities to share knowledge about their own cultural background and with their classmates. This is a wonderful opportunity. Many of us in our music programs engage students through choral music, through vocal music, and sometimes instrumental music, cultural ways of doing things and cultural values, whether it's languages or other things, through the music, right? We teach our students how to sing in languages that don't represent their own culture, right? We sometimes teach them dances, or maybe even other types of customs that are beyond their own personal cultural lived experience. And so Bree Picauer believes that we can do this in our elementary classrooms, in our middle school classrooms, our high school classrooms. And I am here to say that our music classrooms are ways in which we can reinforce this idea of respect for others. Here's a song called Stand Upon the Rock that I wrote a number of years ago. And it says, stand on the rock for freedom, stand on the rock for justice, stand on the rock for liberty. We must stand upon the rock. Again, this piece is available if you go to halleonard.com, and it's available for two-part SSA and also SAATB, I think. Look at what the words say. For taking a stand against all hatred and greed, we must stand upon the rock. And showing compassion for those in need, we must stand upon the rock. For peace in all places where there's conflict and war, we must stand upon the rock. Respecting all people for who they are, we must stand upon the rock. So you can see how social justice is in here, elements of social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, but also you can see how this ties into social emotional learning, right? Showing compassion for those in need. That is a social emotional learning skill of being able to recognize the emotions of others. Okay? So the third area, element of social justice are issues of social injustice. Teachers can move from celebrating diversity, which was the respect for others, to an exploration of how diversity can be experienced as oppression that has differently impacted various groups of people. The fourth is social movements and social change. Teachers can share examples of movements of iconic and everyday people standing together to address issues of social injustice that they learned about in element 3. Awareness raising. Teachers can provide opportunities for students to teach others about issues that they have learned about. And finally, social action. Teachers can provide opportunities to take action on issues that affect students and their communities. So these are the 6 elements of social justice. And I'm here to tell you that I believe that choral music can play a very important role, vocal music, choral music can play a very important role in meeting these elements and taking on these elements. So why teach social justice? Well, you afford your students the opportunity to engage in authentic examination in the world around them and to make positive changes. Your classroom, regardless of the content you teach, can be an incubator for social justice discussions. So this is some of the language that some of the scholars and experts have to say. They also talk about students can learn to look at current and historical events, including their own actions through the lens of social justice. So In addition to maybe current and historical events that are in the world out there, they can also look at personal issues that social justice issues in terms of how their classroom is being run, how their school is being run, how their community is being run and regulated. So why teach social justice in the music classroom? Well, David Elliott, a really important music education philosopher, talks about infusing school music with an ethic of care for oneself and the health of our social community. So in other words, we don't just teach music for the sake of teaching music. While it is important to teach music from sort of an aesthetic perspective and help students understand the beauty of music and the beauty of art, we must also, according to Eliot, put that art to work and help our students to understand how is this art relevant to my own life, and not just how beautiful is this, but what does this mean for my own life, and what does this mean for my community? So that's what one of the rationales for talking about social justice issues in the classroom. Levy and Bird talk about song lyrics include ideas, some related to social justice, such as accepting others, challenging discrimination, examining privilege, and rejecting violence. So we certainly have a very powerful tool in the choral music that we teach. And Bradley says that through the act of singing, we not only embody the music, but the message of the song. And that's what's important. In addition to just the music that will probably stay with the student for the rest of his or her or their lives, the message of the music will stay with them as well, potentially forever. So accepting others, challenging discrimination, and examining privilege were sort of those other three areas of social justice, as well as rejecting violence. So what are the educational outcomes? Performing with accuracy, we certainly think that that's a great outcome. Critical thinking, contextualizing, analyzing. Again, these are skills that go beyond just music. Some of these skill sets also feed into our social emotional learning rubric. Creating new lyrics and recitations to accompany the scores. I believe that that's important for our students. Reflecting and responding to the themes in the music, and applying and connecting the work to our own lives. And you'll see in gold here, I've highlighted the four standards, art standards, music standards, right? Performing, creating, responding, and connecting. So I'll just say this before we read through some music. Social justice principles are part of every community and should be reinforced in every classroom, including the music classroom. There are many opportunities to connect music with social justice issues. As I mentioned earlier today, we're not just teaching music, we are teaching people. And the text in vocal choral music can amplify the themes of social justice that singers can apply to their everyday lives. So I will stop sharing for a moment because I want to just pull up some music that may reinforce some of these concepts. For example, here's an SSA piece called Sing as One. And the lyrics talk a lot about diversity and inclusion. And I think that you will enjoy it. So you'll get a chance to sing along with these score plays, and the music will flip all by itself as you listen to the recording. So hopefully you will enjoy Sing as One. This is an SSA piece, and hopefully that will be applicable to some of you in your teaching circumstances. So here we go. enjoyed that piece. The next piece we're going to sing together or listen to is entitled What is Water? And you may ask yourself, well, what does that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion and access? Well, water, most of us, I would think, believe that that is a basic right, clean water, to have clean water. Well, not everybody has access to clean water in the world. And so this piece doesn't really talk about access to clean water, but it does sort of, if you're doing a theme of environmental justice, for example, in your classroom or in your school, this could certainly be a piece that would be applicable. This is a two-part piece. Music is by Judith Harrington, a Seattle, Tacoma-based composer. So here is What is Water? Words by Hilda Conkling and music by Judith Harrington. Feel free to sing along or just watch. So that's a cool little piece. And there are lots of musical things obviously in there. There's 3/4 time, there's 6/8 time, and all the rhythms and the modal things going on. There's sequence, and there's just wonderful, rich musical ideas to learn there. But again, there's also this idea to extrapolate this piece out into some sort of discussion as it relates to social justice. Speaking of social justice issues, let's go to a piece by Emily Crocker. It's available SSA and also SATB. I think we're going to be listening to the SSA voicing, but looking at the SATB score. And this is a piece called Courage Calls to Courage, and it's about women's right to vote. And so that was certainly a very important social movement over 100 years ago. And she's written a piece about it, and this may be applicable in your classroom as you perhaps study the music, but also want to take advantage of studying this particular movement and point in our history.
Courage calls to courage. Courage calls to courage. Courage calls to courage. Oh, every day, every day, every day, every day. Courage, 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 courage calls to courage. Courage calls to courage. Courage calls to courage. Oh, every day, every day, every day. We, the undersigned citizens of the United States of America, believe that all women who are citizens have the right to vote. Courage, 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 courage calls to courage. Courage, courage calls to courage. Courage, courage calls to courage. Oh, every day, every day, every day. Courage has a voice that cannot be silenced. Listen to the voice whose it is in your hands. Be strong, be free, be steadfast on the journey. Your voice, your song, your vote, your right. Oh, courage calls to courage. Oh, courage calls to courage. Oh, courage calls to courage. Oh, every day, every day, every day. Every
That's a great piece on so many levels, musical and extra musical. Let's listen to a piece. This is a two-part piece called Sim Shalom. And this piece very much reflects the ideas of diversity, equity, inclusion, in that it rejects violence, right? It really upholds the principle, the value of peace. And so this is a two-part piece, Sim Shalom. Hope that you enjoy.
Avinu, Avinu, Sim Shalom. Avinu, Avinu, Sim Shalom. Avinu, Avinu, Sim Shalom.
Another beautiful piece of music. I'm going to just share one more piece before we close out with the Q&A session. And it is a piece entitled Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. It's available SSA, which I think is the version we're listening to. And it's also available SATB. And this piece, of course, very much falls into the social justice category because it was a piece that was sung quite a bit during the civil rights movement. And it's a call to action. It's a call to action. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on marching, keep on singing, shouting, marching up to freedom land. So very important piece historically in its role in the civil rights movement, and a piece that could certainly be applicable for your classroom for musical reasons, but also for social justice purposes. So here we go. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on marching up to freedom land, marching up to freedom land. There are words like freedom, sweet and wonderful to say. On my heartstrings freedom sings, all day, every day. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on singing, keep on shouting, keep on marching up to freedom land, marching up to freedom land. There are words like liberty that almost make me cry. If you had known what I know, you would know why. I cannot turn around. No, 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 I cannot turn around. I cannot turn around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on singing, keep on shouting, keep on marching up to freedom land, marching up to freedom land. Freedom.
Okay, we will stop there and open things up for Q&A. We have just a few minutes left, and I believe there are 3 questions here. So the first question, Melody, I think may relate to what we did earlier. It says, thank you to your awesome set of great collaborators for sharing the process for Never Give Up. The delightful group. This question may definitely be addressed at other times since it diverges from the content flow. I'm especially interested in the technology behind combining the videos and images of your singers. Is there a program or individual that you could direct me toward? The images compilation are clear, bright, engaging. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Melody. I can honestly tell you, and I'm just being flat honest, I haven't a clue as to what technology the software was being used, because it was the people on the Greenwich, Connecticut side. They just did all of that. They just had me come in and work with the kids, and we talked about the concept. So I'm afraid I just don't have that knowledge at all. But I'm sure there's some experts out there that can help you. I'm doing virtual choir projects with my own choir here at Temple University, and I have literally farmed out everything to somebody else. I'm just teaching the music, mainly not because I'm not interested in the technological side. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. I'm a dean also, and Craig Jessup can tell you about life as a dean. It's a lot. The question from Rinda is about what is the significance of the rock in Stand Upon the Rock? That's a very good question. So there, in African American spirituals, rock refers to both solid ground and also on God foundation. So it has both sacred and secular meanings. And you can, so when I created this piece in the style of a spiritual, it was about standing upon a foundation. And for some people, that foundation can be their family. For some, it is their family and their faith. And so that's what Stand on the Rock for Freedom, Stand on the Rock for Justice is all about. I coupled that what I wrote, the original material, Stand on the Rock, with the spiritual "Old Rocks Don't Fall on Me," and that was it. Again, it has both a secular and sacred meaning. The rock, because slaves were singing "Old rocks don't fall on me, rocks and mountains don't fall on me," and that there were several meanings. That one is mountainous areas were sometimes used, or rock formations were used for slaves to escape, right? And so physically they might be hiding behind rocks and that sort of thing. So they didn't want the rocks to fall on them, literally. But they also didn't want, the "Old Rocks Don't Fall on Me" is this kind of metaphor for life, in that you don't want to create something that is not structurally sound, so that it ends up collapsing on you in the long run. And so you must live a life of truth and justice and righteousness and being kind to other people, because you don't want that negative to come back and fall on you. So there's a lot of metaphors in spirituals. So I hope that helps. Kirk has a question. Thanks for the topics. Looking for repertoire ideas for children's choir 1 and 2, 3 part. What are really like classical? We really like classical or folk music. Will we have a list of pieces you shared with us today? Do you have other suggestions? Yes, I will put together a list of the pieces I shared today, along with a lot more pieces, just things you should definitely look at. 2-part, 3-part treble pieces. Just, I'll try to put together my top 50 or something, and I'll just put them together for you. Susan has a question. Thanks for the terrific workshop. Really valuable, practical, also kid-friendly definition of equity versus equality. Oh, thank you so much for that. Karen has a question. Thank you for the workshop. I really appreciate that. I have high school students who are very sensitive social justice issues and request cuts to lines in musicals, songs from musicals, worried about singing spirituals because they're white. Yes, try to explain some situations in terms of cultural appreciation versus cultural appropriation. In other situations, we've made cuts because of their evaluation. We've determined that some of those materials truly did not represent or what we want to be representing our school. Do you have thoughts about this? Yeah, Karen, that's a good question. And I'm afraid I don't have a, excuse me, a short answer for you. Email me offline if you'd like, Rollo at Rollo Dilworth. Sorry, not my personal. Email me at school, rollo.dilworth at temple.edu. I'd be happy to give you some more insights and some responses about that. It really is about cultivating a culture within your school in which there is a wide understanding and respected understanding of what cultural appreciation versus cultural appropriation are, and how you can begin to think about incorporating the lived experiences in others into the work that you do, whether it's cutting out words that are might be potentially offensive and that sort of thing, pronouns. There are all sorts of things that are going on in our society now as it relates to social justice and diversity, equity, inclusion. And so that's a longer conversation, but email me at rollo.dilworth, 1 L in the last name, 2 in the first, at temple.edu. Be happy to engage you further and even talk to your school board. I've talked to a lot of parent boards and school boards about cultural appropriation because I've done a lot of research in that area and other things. So thank you, Karen, for your wonderful question. And I believe that is it.
Oh my goodness. Rollo, thank you so very much for your time today. We have just learned so much, and we're so very grateful for everything you've shared.
My pleasure.
All right, everyone. We are past time, so we'll try and wrap this up. I just want to let you know, as a reminder, everyone who's registered for the conference. So we give us a few days to put all this together. But if you have registered for this event, we will send you a link. Sorry, let me start over. We will send you any of the materials that Rollo is willing to share. That includes that first initial PDF, any of the PowerPoints or whatever that he feels like he'd be willing to share with us. We will send a link to this video that will be active for a month. Just so you know where to watch it if you wanted to go back and review certain sections. Once again, we'll ask that you respect Rollo's wishes and not just share willy-nilly, but sort of keep it. If you registered for the conference, then you have access to this information for just a short time. We will also include a link to a survey. And this is for everyone who attended today. We'd like to get their thoughts on how you feel like this went. There'll be a few questions asking what you liked, what you didn't like. If we were to do something like this again in the future, what sort of topics would you like to be included? This is also if you want to get relicensure points for Utah teachers, that'll ask some questions about that. Rollo, thank you so much for being willing to include some repertoire choices. We'll also make sure that that goes out in an email to everyone as well. And I think that is it. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. It's been a pleasure to serve you today, and wish you all the best moving forward with your work.
Thank you, Rollo. We really appreciate it. All right, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just hanging around for a second in case you all need to talk to me about anything.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure. And I just really had a great time, and just an honor to have been invited to share some ideas and some thoughts. And I'll definitely compile the handout. I'll even provide the score to Never Give Up. It's the two-part version that we heard today is still in production, but I'll give everybody kind of a sneak preview of that score, and I'll put together a list of repertoire, particularly treble, but a little bit of SATB as well, of some pieces that I think are very valuable as it relates to SEL, DEI, or anything else for that matter. And I think that's about it. I threw the link to the Greenwich Choir in the chat a little earlier. I'm sure people will find that in case they're interested, but I mean, we can certainly send that out to them again if you'd like. Anything else that you can think of? And it will take me a day or two. It will likely be sometime tomorrow that I'll get everything together and send to you.
Take some time. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for being.
And if I forget, remind me. I'm getting old. I really am 50, and so I might forget. So remind me of those things.
Wonderful.
All
Oh
right.
my goodness, we're just so grateful. That was so incredible and so much wonderful information shared. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks to both of you for making it happen, and best wishes as you move forward with your work with young people.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.